Muy buenos días para todos y para todas. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a este
Good
evento
morning, everyone,
en
and
nuestro
welcome
estudio
to
temático
this
sobre la elaboración de un
session
enfoque basado en rutas
on
migratorias
a
y los
mapping
programas
a
de transferencia
route-based
voluntaria.
approach to
Este es un
CVA,
informe
cash and voucher assistance.
realizado a lo largo del
This
2023 y
is
me gustaría que
a
estén con nosotros.
report
Soy
that we have
Diego Prado y soy
been
el
working on since
vicepresidente allí en
2023. I am Diego Prado,
Bienvenidos
representative
mientras se siguen sumando.
deputy for
Agenden
the
sus
Americas
documentos
of CALP.
electrónicos.
And while we wait for the rest to connect, we'll start with the
Muy bien,
introduction.
entonces como lo pueden ver allí en pantalla para aquellas personas que nos
To get
escuchan
you
en inglés
started,
tienen
we have
en español
simultaneous
y
interpretation
pueden utilizar el botón
into
interpretación
English. In
y
order to
cambiar
use
a
this
inglés.
service,
Tenemos
you
la
have
opción
to
para
click
ustedes
on
allí en el
the
logo como
globe
siempre
icon
y por
and
favor
choose the language
si
of your preference.
están en otras partes del mundo y quieren sumarse en este idioma, bienvenidos
So
sean.
if you'd like to
Contamos con
listen
unos
in
intérpretes
into English,
bilingües.
please choose English, and if not, you listen to the
Muy
original
bien,
presentation in
entonces el evento
Spanish.
del día de hoy tiene dos grandes objetivos
Today's
a tener en
event
cuenta.
has
El
two
primero,
main
como les
objectives to
mencionaba,
retain.
estamos buscando
First of all,
estimular
with
un cambio
this
en el sistema humanitario,
approach, we're looking to
especialmente en
enable
el cual
a
estamos
change in
utilizando
the
allí
humanitarian
el enfoque
system,
basado en
a
rutas
change that
cuando
requires
realizamos
to
transferencias
be made
migratorias.
when we focus
El segundo
on
objetivo, por supuesto,
this
es que ustedes, los
route-based
participantes
approach.
del evento, se inspiren
Second
con las
objective
rutas
is
para
that
comenzar a
you,
trabajar
as
con estas
participants, can
rutas.
get
Hoy
inspired
vamos a tener
to
el gusto
take
de
measures
conocer
and
en primera
start
voz un
to
poco más
use
sobre
this
el
route-based
informe que
approach
envió el
in the
informe.
Americas.
Afortunadamente el título del
So
informe
we
lo
will
realizamos en nuestra
explain
página
a
web.
bit more
Bueno,
thoroughly
una
the
nota
report we
adicional,
published
estamos
on
ofreciendo
September
todo
15th,
el marco teórico
so
para
that
poder
you can
hablar
better
de las
understand
rutas
the
y posiblemente
theoretical
utilizar
framework
transferencias
and
monetarias como
the
método de
routes,
pago
and potentially
en
use the CVA as one of available mechanisms.
Muy bien, entonces en la agenda lo primero que ustedes encontraron
So
es la
this is our
encuesta que hoy les
agenda,
comentábamos
and
al
the
principio
first
del
thing you
evento.
found was
Este es
a
el evento que
survey,
nos permite saber la
in which
audiencia
we ask you where are you
registrada
from
en las
and where are
Americas
you
y les
connected.
voy a
We
informar
want to
de
know
estos
if we have
estudiantes.
participants
Teniendo
from
en
the
cuenta que
Americas
esta
or
agenda
from other
es
regions from around the
doble y
world,
estamos
taking
aprovechando
into
el
account
inglés
the
como
importance of
interpretación,
the report. That's why we also
en
have
este evento
interpretation so that we can
vamos a tener
reach more
escenarios donde
people.
Iván Ibarich
We
y nuestro
will have
vicepresidente
a scenario
compartirán
where our
contigo
regional
paso a paso,
coordinator
de
will
forma muy
explain the
sencilla, clara,
document step
aproximadamente
by
15
step in a
minutos
very
para
clear and brief
interpretarlo.
way. It
Tendremos
will be
después de
around
tener la
15
oportunidad de
minutes.
tener un
And
debate, una
after that,
conversación
we'll have the
con los
opportunity to
panelistas
open a
invitados que
debate and to
hemos
have a
invitado.
conversation with the panelists we have invited. I will
Posteriormente, un
introduce
corto
them in a
trabajo en grupo
second.
donde todos ustedes
After that, we'll do a
para que
quickly
puedan
group
interactuar con
exercise
nosotros
in which you will all have the
efectivamente y
opportunity
puedan dar
to interact with
opiniones.
us and
Esto
share your
para
opinions.
llevarles
We also have
allí
a couple of
esta sesión.
guiding
Por
questions
último,
for this
les
session.
comparto y la idea es que
And
ustedes
finally, we'll have
hagan
a open
en
debate
la sección de preguntas
as
y
well.
respuestas todas las preguntas que
Here,
quieran hacerles a nuestros
we would
invitados como
ask
también a
you
nosotros.
to raise
Es
all the
importante
questions you
para que
have
ustedes puedan
for
empezar a
our
entender un
panelists
poco el
and
lenguaje
for
que
the
utilizamos
CALP
nosotros al
network.
respecto.
So if you have any
Luego
questions or doubts, that will
terminaremos
be the time
dándoles
to
un
raise them.
resumen
And finally, we will
informativo
reach
de
our
la jornada de trabajo
conclusions,
que
and
durará
Holly will share
45 minutos.
with that
Bien.
after having an hour and 45 minutes of work.
Muy bien, entonces en pantalla encuentran a nuestros panelistas invitados.
You'll see on the
Vamos a
screen
empezar
our
por la compañera
panelists for
Daniela Funes,
today.
coordinadora
We have
regional
Daniela
de
Funes,
las
Regional
Americas de
Coordinator
CVA,
for the
como
Americas
pueden ver allí en
of
pantalla, y
the
con ella también
Federation. You see her on
Guadalupe Díaz.
screen.
Ella es
Also with us,
una de las
Guadalupe
representantes legales
Diaz, one
de
of the
CALP,
legal
una
representatives from
de las plataformas
UPC Vale,
en
one of the
Centroamérica y
platforms
Norteamérica
that
mayormente
is
sobre
active
temas
in
financieros.
North and South Americas
Contamos
as a
con la
financial
presencia de
service
Diego Prado,
provider.
que también
We also
está
have Pierre
en nuestro
Norceron with us from
estudio
ECHO
y
as
que nos
one
permite compartir su
of
experiencia
our
con
donors who
ustedes
is willing to share
acerca de
his
cómo
experience
organizar
with
esta
us
ruta.
regarding
Nosotros
innovative
estamos viendo
topics regarding the route. And we also have here with me Mr. Hector Jose Añez. He is a Venezuelan migrant who was kind enough to work with us today and to share his experience with us. He's a CVA participant, and that way we will give the whole tour of what we work on with the route-based approach for CVA. I will give the floor to Holly to give us a first presentation. Thank you so much, Diego, and thank you to all of our participants. Thank you for everyone who is with us today. I'd like to share with you why this topic is very important to us with CALP Network and Femina Network to provide a better humanitarian service to people on the move. Thousands of people walk through the forests of Panama, like in the Sahel, and they get to the coast of Italy and Greece. Human mobility is a international phenomenon that is on the rise. In 2020, 281 million people lived in a different country from which they were born. This has increased 120% since 1990. UNHCR estimates that by the end of 2022, over 108 million people will be forcibly displaced. Human mobility is a specificity of huge humanitarian crisis. During these crises, CVA programming are used to provide support. However, providing CVA programming may encounter several issues. For example, when we encounter people in this route-based approach. Due to this context, I apologize for my slides, they're a bit slow. So the time has come to move from a country approach to a route-based approach. In 2022, CALP launched a new thematic website on cash and voucher assistance programming and human mobility. This is a crucial topic for our stakeholders. CALP and other stakeholders look to work more thoroughly on this, and we published our first report. The first report had two main call to actions. The first calling was to show and implement CVA programming that place people at the center based on their geography, frictions, motivations, routes, and the reception infrastructure, as well as mobility or the ability of people to move. The second call to action was to change the design unity from a country approach to a route-based approach in human mobility context. If we focus on this second call, in 2023, we were able to carry out a study on the feasibility of the route-based approach. We were able to present it through three perspectives: people on the move, humanitarian organizations, and financial service providers. I would like to share how this mapping of a route-based approach can be used in the Americas. In the most recent CALP report, called the mapping of a route-based approach and use of CVAs. We change the approach to the root. The first argument is that there's a wish. People on the move have shared that they prefer CVA program. The Federation was able to study three different contexts on humanitarian mobility and found a overwhelming information. For example, Colombia, 84% of the people that was interviewed preferred CVA. People on the move have different needs, and they know best how to use the transfers for their families. The second argument, is it feasible? Human workers have expressed that no financial service providers work through the borders. However, this is false. There are options and closed circuit payment services, cryptocurrency. We have service providers such as Visa, MasterCard, banks, and we also have the third argument, which is we have the needed elements. These elements exist already and are even present in some contexts. For example, coordinated responses with multiple agencies, agencies that are able to provide ongoing delivery to people on the move along the routes, and unified delivery programs. These elements will depend on the context. The fourth argument, actors are already innovating. This program has a low cost strategy at a high efficiency to work with people on the move. The point of services has implemented stations on the go along the routes for people to go there. They can also use the app F8 that can be used by other humanitarian organizations in which they can provide information on the services that are closer to them. I'd like to mention that CALP is not the only organization that promotes a route-based approach. There are other shareholders that have worked on this and have even the IPRC has even published a report on migration trail in the Sahel. This is a report in Africa that reached the same conclusion as we did. Our study also presents three potential scenarios for this route-based approach in the Americas, and they all have its pros and cons depending on the context. The first scenario is the station in passing that can offer CVA programming and other assistant providing models. The second scenario is the wallet or pocket book. Here we can align the needs to people on the move. And the third scenario is the wagon. Here we use a functionality or feasibility approach in which we connect the payment rallies like Visa and MasterCard and the network cards, as well as one or two other issuer banks. Please do not get overwhelmed with all of this information and the topic we're addressing. However, we do need to digest all of this information and set it to our context. And please remember that we need to look for a commitment to change. Our in our reality, human mobility is increasing and ever changing, and thousands of people go through very dangerous journeys. We believe that a route based approach is possible in the Americas. It's desired and it's feasible. And moreover, we have the needed elements. Our most recent report presents three different scenarios to implement a route based approach in the Americas. How to be successful, we need pioneers who are willing to change, and we also need to change our collaborative response as a humanitarian response. This is not just a report, it's the beginning of a journey towards a change in our mindsets and how people on the move experience humanitarian support. We have also tried to make more accessible a very complex and dense topic. This is the first time that we have a more accessible version of the report that are neurodivergent and people who do not use screens. So we try to put at the forefront the voices of the people on the move that were interviewed during this report. We also have audio recordings that are available in English and Spanish in our website. We work to offer better and more accessible products. Please let us know how we're doing on this front. To close, I'd like to think about the potential that CVA programming have to enable people on the move to make less risky decisions. This can be done if they have a feasible CVA program along their journey. And they might ask, this might increase the risk of protection of people on the move, doesn't it? But this is not the right question. We should rather be asking ourselves, what are the risks of not providing this type of assistance to people on the move? With that, I give the floor to Diego.
Muchas gracias, Holly, por la introducción y gracias por
Thank you
la
so
explicación
much,
del
Holly, for this
estudio.
presentation and
Ya
for
saben que este se
briefly
encuentra en nuestra página web,
introducing this report. You
nuestras
can find it on
distintas
our
fuentes de
website, and we will also
esto
send it
el
via
resumen
chat. There are three ways of reading it:
explicativo que pueden
the
encontrar con
full
calma.
summary,
Muy
the
bien, entonces
explanatory summary, and the
invito a
stories
este
as
panel
well.
con los invitados
I'd
que
like
tenemos
to
el día de
begin
hoy.
this panel with
La
our
primera
special
es la Daniela
guests.
Funes,
As you can see, we
Guadalupe
have Daniela
Pierre
Funes,
Figueroa,
Guadalupe
pero
Diaz,
también
and
tenemos
Pierre
aquí a
Nazaron.
Daniela, que es la
And
sorpresa que
also
teníamos
to my
planeado,
left with me
para
on the screen,
Daniel Rodríguez.
a
Bueno,
surprise to you,
un migrante
Mr.
venezolano
Daniel
que
Rodriguez, a
está
Venezuelan
en
migrant
Colombia
who
y
had
se
the
encuentra
opportunity
actualmente basado en
to
Bogotá.
come to Colombia. He is
Él
based
fue
in
promocionado
Bogota,
en
and
movimiento
he was
Bogotá
one
Respuesta.
of a person on the
Y
move,
ahora
and he will
daremos
share his
presentar
experience
a Daniela,
with us.
Guadalupe y a Pierre que enciendan sus cámaras
And now I
para
will
que
ask
nos
Daniela,
puedan
Guadalupe, and Pierre
explicar
to turn
cómo
on their video
trabajamos
cameras
nuestro
to start the
mecanismo de
panel and
evaluación.
to explain how we're going to work for the next 40 minutes.
Muy bien, Guadalupe, Daniela, Pierre, muchísimas
Very
gracias por
well.
estar conmigo.
Thank you so
Gracias
much,
por estar
Guadalupe,
aquí
Daniela, and Pierre,
conmigo.
for being
Voy a
here with us, and Hector
brevemente
as well.
los
I
perfiles de
will
Daniela,
briefly
Pierre, para que sepan
introduce
quiénes son.
all of you so that
Daniela
we know a little
trabaja
bit
para la
who you are.
Organización
Daniela is the
Mundial
regional
como
coordinator of in the
voluntaria de la
Americas
Federación Internacional de
for
la Cruz Roja.
the
Ella ha
International
trabajado de cerca con sociedades nacionales de la
Organization of
región
the
en la
Red Cross.
implementación de
She has
programas
worked
locales
with partners
humanitarios
in the region
y
on CVA
especialista en programas
programming
sectoriales
and
como medio
emergency
ambiental
response and
así
sectorial
como
programs
atención temprana.
such as means of life and health
Guadalupe
and
es
early
Legal
responses.
Government Manager y
Guadalupe is a
general
corporate
de
manager and
UPSI
legal
Valley
representative of
y su
UPSI
principal
Valley in
propósito es
Mexico.
participar en
Her main task is to participate in hiring processes with governmental entities and humanitarian organizations. Her goal is to provide an excellent service in salaries, humanitarian support, social programs, and work benefits. And finally, we have Pierre, who is part of ECHO, as many of you know. He has over 10 years of experience in international cooperation and 8 years in programs that deal with responding to emergencies. He has been working for 5 years with the European Union in developing programs for food security, cash transfer, and basic needs. He's based in Panama, working for ECHO. Thank you to all three of you for being here with us. This is how the panel will work. We will raise questions for each and every one of you. And for the participants, we will do the same. So Holly mentioned a CVA programming with a route-based approach needs to be feasible, desired, and needs to have the desired and the needed elements to be implemented. So those are the terms that we will use to see if it's desirable, if it's feasible. For example, Hector can talk about the desired factor, Guadalupe and Daniela can talk about the feasibility factor, and Pierre can talk about the implementation factor. So that will be the order of our speakers, and I will start with the first question. Don Hector, you will be the first one to answer. Please come here to the video camera. So the first question, I'd like you to tell us your journey and which organization supported you. Very well. My journey started a bit over a year ago from Valencia, of the Carabobo state in Venezuela. With my own means, I was able to get to San Antonio Tache. And in Colombia, I through a bus, I went to Cucuba and I was heading to Bogota. Also, with my own means, I was able to reach a region called Bocayam. My wife encountered health issues because she has some cervix issues. And when we got there, it was very difficult. She had issues with her bladder. And when we got to the SOA, we didn't know who to talk to. We asked for a bathroom, and to my surprise, when I saw her come out of the bathroom, she was already sitting down in front of a computer, giving our data, all of our contact information, even our child who was 12 at the time. She was able to receive medication and health assistance. And we also received the financial aid through a card. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Hector, if you had a message to humanitarian organizations as to how to go about the process, what would you recommend for people on the move? First of all, I would say that it is no lie that when we say that money is important, it is important. It's the element that allows us to survive every day, to keep us going. We all do have different needs. In my case, for example, with my wife and my son, we our needs were more on the health side, healthcare side, because of the health issues my wife had, and also we were also very grateful because we were given food and clothes, but that factor of cash of receiving the money, and you should emphasize it more because the money element is truly what allows us to keep paying the daily expenses. So it is those small details that can make a huge difference. Sure, we can sleep on a bed, but we do have needs as migrants, and it is overwhelming day after day. Mr. Actor, do you think that the best way to help you was through the card, or was there anything else you could have needed? Say once again that the best support given was through this card. This card allowed us to spend 2 nights at the hotel. We were able to do it. I traveled to travel with my dog. Fortunately, I was able to travel here to Bogota with my dog, thanks to them. They also paid for the health services, and also thanks to the change, the thanks to the card, I was able to get out money and pay for food, and we've been in Bogota for 7 months.
A las organizaciones humanitarias les recomienda que utilicen cada vez más la transferencia monetaria como un...
That is why humanitarian organizations are recommended to use CVA to the best possible extent. So I would like to ask you something. You have a member of a donor organization, so I would like to thank them because without their support, it wouldn't be possible. What I would like to ask this person is that just as organization means being organized, I have realized that there are organizations that are grouped together, but with all due respect, is there a organization that can bring you all together into a single organization so that it is easier and more feasible that you as organizations do something so that it is easier for us to migrants to get in touch with you and get the type of support that I was deeply lucky to receive. To the participants who do not know about the route from San Antonio del Táchira at the Colombian border, there is a city called Cúcuta, and you were able to go to the city of Copayán in the south of Colombia. This city is south of Cali, close to the Ecuadorian border. However, Hector decided that he wanted to go back to Bogota, and between Popayan and Bogota, that's where he received the support from SOA. He received a cash-based transfer. He received a card that allowed him to have access to different services, such as hotels, but he was also to pay for his transportation and for food. This is very important because these are the main needs of these people. So thank you so much, Hector. But I would like to ask you to stay because I am sure there will be questions. It is a pleasure to meet you, and I will be here if you need anything. Very well. So the recommendation I would like to make is that you leave us your questions in the questions and the answers chat. If you have any questions for our panelists, please send them there. Later, we will have 15 minutes so that they can answer some of your questions through Zoom and the chat. I will now hand it over to Daniela. Thank you so much, Daniela, for being here.
Es bastante deseable cuando hablamos de la utilización de transferencias monetarias cuando una persona
Here you have
usualmente
seen
tiene que
that
mover
it is very important to provide cash-based transfers in cases such as Hector's.
Sabemos de los avances que hay en la federación sobre el uso de programas de
We already
subsidio
know about
monetario.
what the Federation has done in terms of CVA and the human mobility, but can you give us a little bit more detail about your operations? Thank you so much, Diego. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you. I would like to share that the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent Societies is strongly working to improve the situation of people in mobility. It is essential to understand their perspective and their needs. We needed to take into consideration that we should identify the clear needs of the communities that we serve, to know what their needs are and to see what the best way of providing our support is. I think that CVAs, as Hector already explained, are essential in the region because they ensure the liberty, the dignity, and the independence for people to choose their destiny. They are the best people to make decisions about that. And right now, the situation has prevented them from making those decisions. At the Federation, we understand that there are many challenges when addressing the situation of people in mobility. There are a lot of situations that make it really hard to manage, and that is why it is important for us to work with people who have already settled somewhere. Also, political changes have an impact on the routes that they follow, on the prices, the agreements, the amount of money that we can provide. But there are changes in prices. It is also difficult to manage inventories. I would also like to highlight that we are working hard to work in partnership with the social security system. Many people in mobility don't have access to these services in a contrast to people who have already settled in a place. That is why we needed to consider the challenges of mobility and the differences between contexts. We work with what we call the national societies in the different countries in this route, mainly Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, and the rest of Central America. There are some fixed humanitarian assistance points along this route. We offer services such as the ones that Hector mentioned, such as basic healthcare, cash-based transfers, and we also offer support for family reunification. I would also like to mention that one of our main ways in which one of the main ways in which we have made progress is that we are also launching operations in Ukraine, and we have created the Access RC app. We are using this app to register the people that we are offering support to in a remote way. So Access RC is an important tool for us. It is a data management platform. And when we combine Access RC with the rest of our tools, we are able to collect the data remotely. We are also able to keep a record of people's identity and to also keep track of their eligibility criteria. There are tools that allow us to manage data in a better way. People are able to use the services according to their location, and we are able to deliver support. The support can also be accessed via global partners. So this is some of the work that we have done since the start of the crisis in Ukraine. We have provided help to 240,000 people, in particular to people who had never received the cash-based transfers. And I think that this is one of the main cases that we can share right now. We think that in Central America, it is very important that people will have access to information in different points. And this is particularly relevant because they may stay for a short period in different places. And what we see in Europe is that the app helps us stay connected to people. They can have access to the app anywhere. It doesn't matter where they initially made their registration, regardless of where they go, they will continue to have access to the platform and our services. So this is a similar case that we are trying to apply in Central America. As a federation, we wanted to replicate and to improve this model. We are going to launch a pilot in Colombia later this year, where we want to offer this solution to the different national societies that we work with.
Justo al final, y yo te iba a
Thank you,
preguntar
Daniela.
cómo lo pensaban traer hacia las Américas y con el
I was
tiempo
going to
y el
ask you
proceso
about
que han
how
llevado,
you're going to bring
¿cómo
this
nos puedes
to the
contar
Americas, but it is
puede
very
ser
clear to
viable y
me
factible
that
hacerlo
the
en
Ukrainian
Colombia?
solution is feasible in
Doctora, y que
Colombia.
todos los participantes puedan hacer un paralelo entre lo que dice el
In
estudio
order for our
y
audience
lo que hicieron
to
allí en
draw a
Colombia,
parallel between our
para que
report
compartan
and
a
what
qué se refieren
we are
con ese
saying
tipo de
here, when Daniela
metodologías
speaks about feasibility,
realizadas por
this
otros
also has to do with
cuáles
the
podrían
fact
pasar lo
that
mismo
these tasks
o
can
algo
be
similar
performed by other
estas
organizations. They can either do the
instituciones
same
y
or
ellos
they can
también
do
involucrados en
something
procesos
similar
de
based on the
estudio
best
para
practices in the
pues,
field.
para que
Also,
compartan
everyone
mejor
is working towards the
ustedes
achievement of universal
a forma de
principles. So,
pensarse
to a certain
similar
extent, you can think if within your agencies some of these ideas
y
are
aquí
feasible and applicable in our region.
porque ya hemos
Daniela,
iniciado un
I would
éxito
like to ask you something. I already asked the actor to say
servicios financieros
something to service providers, to financial service providers in particular. Now, what would you tell them? Because they are essential in this sense.
anotado por Piera y por el lado de los donantes.
And this way, Pierre will also take a note of this as the representative of the donors. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Kalpan Network because it has brought different stakeholders together who are working in the same region. This is a very good starting point because we all have the same difficulties and the same struggles as humanitarian workers. And if we realize that our challenges are similar, we can engage in a better collaboration. These are not isolated experiences. Humanitarian organizations that are trying to deliver this support could change their services and their offer in order to continue to provide a dignified assistance to people in mobility. I think that this is very important because if we understand where we can work together, we will already know what the bottlenecks are and go and ask the service providers for a change. Service providers do not win much when they work with us, the humanitarian workers. So that is why they should understand the need and our work. They should be aware of the situation that the beneficiaries are going through. So we also need a certain level of flexibility, but these changes are more difficult. However, if we work collaboratively, things could be easier. I also see that we could receive support for the pilot projects because we are putting some innovations in place I don't think that things will work out perfectly at the first go, but it's a little bit of a trial and error. We needed to see what works and what doesn't. Also, there isn't just one way of doing things. There are different humanitarian workers with multiple implementation and delivery mechanisms. For example, we work with Visa and MoneyGram, and they have given us good results, but we should continue to work with the rest of humanitarian workers to receive support during pilot projects. Additionally, we should share among ourselves what has worked and what hasn't, and this way we will prevent mistakes, and we will be able to incorporate best practices that have proven useful in the past. As Calp has said, we needed to work together as a single or in a single front, and we needed to raise a one united voice so that financial service providers understand our work and our donors as well. That way, we will get their support, their flexibility, and we already know that, for example, biometrics could be very useful, yet this is one of the main problems with people in mobility because they don't have a local ID or their documents have expired. So they needed to understand that there is also accountability towards them, and the financial service providers should be comfortable with the fact that they know who is receiving their support. Thank you so much. I think you have just raised two very important points, and I think that Guadalupe and Pierre will be taking a closer look at this. So, what I take two takeaways from what you said. First of all, the fact that financial service providers are also people and that they are not only working for the sake of their profession, but they also have a social responsibility and they want to work with us regardless of the number of beneficiaries or the economic benefit that they may get. They also have good experiences that could be shared with people who are in need. On the side of the donors, Pierre, I am sure that it is more and more clear to you that people need support in a or at different levels, and they all will always need more. Now I will hand it over to you in a moment so that we can also hear from you. Now I would like to hand it over to you, Guadalupe. Thank you so much for being with us. You are the representative of multiple financial service providers, but you are also proof of what we have been able to do in terms of cross-border cash-based transfers through CVAL. So what we wanted to know is how we can go to the next level. What have you done? Hector was able to receive a card and to buy products and the services according to his needs. But now I would like to ask you if it is possible to have CVA programs with multiple providers. Also, based on your experience, what has the experience of Civale been in this context? Thank you so much, Diego. Good morning, everyone. Thank you also to the Calpe team for inviting me to this forum so that we can look at route-based approaches and CVAs. If you allow me, before answering your question, I would like to give you an overview of the company that I represent so that our audience becomes familiar with us. And after that, I will share our experience with two big organizations that we have supported. So first of all, I would like to say that for Civale, it has been a huge adventure to participate in these projects. We know that our products and services contribute to changing the lives of people, and this for us is priceless. I would like to pursue this discussion by explaining what CVA is. CVA is a company that works both at the private and the public sector, and we are a part of the UP group, which is French, and it has more than 24.5 million users in 29 countries in the Americas, in Europe, and Africa. We have 4 types of solutions, and here is where this subject comes in. First of all, we have control, incentives, social programs, and financial services. This is very important, especially for people who do not have access to a bank as such. In Civale, our infrastructure is very solid in order to provide services to all our clients, and this way we are able to offer both the physical and digital cards whenever it is necessary. And I think that in the humanitarian context, this is very relevant because when beneficiaries are identified, they needed to get help right away. So the point is that they have access to the card immediately and are able to use it right away. Now that I have explained what Civale is, I would like to share with you our experience as a solution provider for CVAs and the humanitarian sector. There are a lot of challenges and specifications due to the number and the type of users, because the users have a very specific needs and they are going through a complicated moment in their life. That is why we are very careful when we offer a solution so that we can give them whatever it is that they need in the shortest possible time. This is particularly relevant for the organizations that provided this type of support. Our first experience of this sort took place in 2018 with the UNHCR. And as you know, this organization does a very noble work, and we help them use or partner the Civale platform with their service in order to facilitate automatic cash transfers to people who had requested asylum in Mexico. Additionally, we had a fund recovery system, meaning that for the funds that were not used within 2 months, they were recovered by us. Also, we were able to recover amounts in case of a misuse. So, for example, if money was given to somebody, but it was not appropriately used, we could get that money back and give it to another beneficiary so that the money wouldn't be locked in specific accounts. So this is what we did in 2018 with the UNHCR. Currently, we continue to work with them. Just to give you an idea, we have 3,000 beneficiaries per month with the UNHCR. It is highly satisfying for us to continue supporting these programs. Additionally, we had a collaboration with the ICRC. We started working with them in a similar way as we did with the UNHCR in Mexico. Here they received an invaluable type of support, and they wanted to partner up with us to give access to more people. However, this became a transboundary project because not only were we asked to make this platform operational in Mexico, but also in Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. As a result, we had to give cards to people and make them work in 4 countries. So this was a huge challenge. Today, we continue to work with this organization. After explaining what we do and the experience we have had with these organizations, now I would like to answer your question. I think that it is indeed possible to continue to provide humanitarian assistance in this way based on the routes that they are following. I think that it is possible, and we would definitely be happy to participate in these efforts. Thank you, Guadalupe. You have been very spot on. So, in sum, what you said is that you learned how the organizations work, you expanded your portfolio of services, and you were able to deliver cross-border services. Now, the platform is ready to work according to a route-based approach because you are already working in Central America and Mexico. So I see that you agree. That's quite encouraging because what we want is to have these types of conversations. Sorry, Diego, just to specify, we were able to make the Mexican platform work in the other countries. I wanted to clarify this because we did not create a new platform. We expanded the existing platform to other countries. Of course, there were challenges, but we had to go over the regulations so that everything would be done correctly. There were some specific challenges that we had not encountered in Mexico, but we were able to overcome them, and the population that was supported in the end was not as numerous as the one we are supporting in Mexico with the UNHCR. Yet we think that if we continue to work on this, we can better tend to the needs of both the organizations and the people. Thank you, Guadalupe. I wanted to use this point to wrap up what you said and link your comment with the report because we emphasize the importance of visibility. When Guadalupe speaks about an operating across a border platform, this shows us that the route-based approach can be successful. She was also talking about the regulations, about how the transfers needed to be adjusted according to the local prices and the currency, and the platform is able to manage all of this. So Guadalupe, in some, you said that something like this is indeed feasible and that we can continue working according to this approach. Finally, Guadalupe, I would like to ask you, what is your recommendation for the humanitarians that are here in this session? We have 89 participants. So what would you recommend them to do if they are working in CVAs and human mobility? I would like to say that it is indeed possible to provide CVAs in this context. You should rest assured that CVALE has the commitment to continue to provide support to these organizations and the people, especially to people who are in mobility due to humanitarian situations. Thank you, Guadalupe, for your participation. I am sure that you will receive some questions through the chat, so please take a look at it. Thank you so much, Diego. Now we are going to hand it over to Pierre, and this way we will close the cycle of discussions about the stakeholders that needed to work together in order to facilitate cash-based transfers. You already saw this, that or you already heard from Hector, Guadalupe, and Daniela that it is possible to do something like this. Additionally, there are some benefits and operating structures at the regional, national, and local levels in order to provide the support in different routes. Now, my question is, what are donors doing to adopt a route-based approach? What can you tell us about that, Pierre?
Como le dijiste bien, es que cada uno de nosotros tenemos un rol, una responsabilidad para hacer que esa respuesta llegue a las personas que lo necesitan más. Para los donantes es muy importante, uno de los primeros elementos que es importante es de dimensionar la crisis. De dimensionar la crisis a diferentes niveles, es decir, desde la mirada de los seres, es decir, cómo hacer la alocación de recursos por región según las necesidades de cada región, pero también las oficinas regionales que apoyan a identificar por subregión cuál subregión
We
tiene.
have identified organizations that are dedicated to identifying very local needs. Also, we look at the different institutions.
Para nosotros es muy importante.
To us, it is very important to ensure stability. We understand that humanitarian needs are numerous, and that is why we emphasize that everybody has different needs so that we can have a better understanding of the multiple crises. Data processing is strongly supported by us, so we really work to understand what or rather who needs what and where. This is very useful in order to strengthen partnerships among donors, but also with civil society and the governments. Additionally, this is very important to make the region's crisis visible. At a global level, Latin America is not necessarily made visible, and neither are its needs. We also work to identify and reduce the gaps. And we needed to work to address the needs and the gaps. Additionally, it is very important to see what we can do to develop a route-based approach. Here, you see this in our finances and programming. Initially, we had an approach based on nationalities in order to tend to the needs of the Venezuelan crisis. And next, we changed it to a vulnerability-based approach because the situation is not it does not depend on the nationality. Vulnerability affects everybody. The second thing that we realized is that the routes have changed.
The second main aspect we were able to see through time is that the route has changed over time. So first, we saw the changes, and starting 2020, 2021, we decided to standardize and to work on a better route-based approach in our programming as to our South American approach isn't as different from the north part and take the situation into account. In July of 2023, we were able to carry out some consultations with our regional partners and around the world, and we talked a lot about protection. Over 3 hours, protection was the most important aspect of our discussions. Everyone went there to discuss how to develop a route-based approach within the region. There are other operational points to take into account. For example, ECHO by itself cannot change this approach. It is a collaborative approach with CALP, CashCAP, our partners, the universities. This is also a work that has to be dealt with our financial services providers, so all the financial side. We also need to consider the fact that this does not respond to immigration, but it does respond to humanitarian needs of people on the move. I say this because we need to focus on the needs, to respond to the needs, rather than focusing on the needs of protection, education, hostels, and we need to identify when these barriers to services are financial barriers. We also need to add elements of analyses, so especially risk analysis to all of this. Another important area of work is beyond money wires. This is a tool to respond to a need, but it is not a sector. And so, as a response model, we cannot have a route-based, we need a route-based approach first. For example, if education does not have a route-based approach, how does a beneficiary in Colombia, for example, a minor that needs to go to school, what type of follow-up can be done in Costa Rica, in Guatemala, in Mexico? We saw the photos on the slides, people with illnesses or injuries that go to a service in Colombia, Ecuador, or Peru after they cross the Darien, or someone who is a victim of violence or assault. What type of follow-up, what type of follow-up service does that person have at the different points and different countries? It's very important to have this follow-up and to exchange data with our partners. I know that we all contribute in adding data to networks, but that's what we need to enable, have this reference system between different partners through different countries with a route-based approach. It's also important to have a strong partners network. Oftentimes, partners try to implement their own route-based approach, and they do not have the same operational level. There might be a partner that can respond here, but there's another partner responding by the border. So the question is, how can we strengthen the collaboration between the networks to allow a stronger operation? Another challenge is to adapt and think about the tools. For example, we have monitoring and distribution, in which we work in collaboration with the partners and providing financial services to identify how people on the move are doing along their journey. So I'm thinking of, for example, a protection case, a family that requires protection, a family with small children with malnutrition. How can we follow up their journey from Costa Rica to Nicaragua and follow up on their health? So not only start doing as a cash walking or cash transfer group, thinking about how to respond within their borders, within their country, but start to think beyond and have this route-based approach mentality. Another experience we had with one of our partners in Nicaragua, this partner wasn't able to implement the money wires, and the only access beneficiaries had there was through supermarkets. So it was through a supermarket chain that the beneficiaries had access to those elements, and they were able to purchase their needs there. So we also need to ask ourselves how to respond to basic needs using different response mechanisms. Okay, thank you very much, Pierre. I'll do a quick summary of what you said, and that way our participants that are joining us from different organizations can also consider it. So we're talking about from the commitments from the donor when it comes to innovation and a route-based approach. However, innovation also has to do with the commitment of the sectors to think about the route, not only from the modality of cash transfers, which is at the risk of sectorial differences. So there is an important reflection to be done on that. We're also asking organizations to have a greater organization as UPSI Valley does it through its cross-border platform. And another essential requirement is to have collaboration and harmonization of processes, one process in different countries that will enable and help us a lot. We would also like to insist, as Pierre and Mr. Hector said, that this is not the only solution, meaning the resource. We need to link it to a specific type of need. So I might have the resource and have a different needs, and that's why we need multidisciplinary team from different sectors. So we see this contribution as a closing to say that this is desired, feasible, and able to, but there are elements that we need in order for it to work. For example, pilot projects from within organizations and the organization, a better organization from the donors. Here we can all sit at the same table, assuming our responsibilities. I would like to thank all four of you. Mr. Hector, thank you so much for being here. Guadalupe, Daniela, and Pierre, thank you so much for being at this panel. As our audience know, we'll have a very short teamwork meeting to prepare our questions, and we will make sure to answer to all of your questions raised on the chat. Our panelists will answer to your questions, and so we'll come back in 15 minutes. So, Holly, you have the floor. Thank you so much. Very interesting and different experiences. And I know you have a lot of questions on your minds, but it is our time to do some work. So we are about 70 people. We will work on this 5 or 7 minutes, so it will be what we propose to do now is to work on our Jamboard. You will find the link on the chat, and you'll see the options in English and Spanish. And you have 3 questions. What are the crucial elements to promote route-based approach? Another question is, do you have any idea to share. There's a colleague who shared actually an idea that has been carried out already. And if you also like to add your organization, where you're coming from, that will help us know who are our allies, with whom we can work with, and where the evidence can be taken out. So you have the link in the chat box, and I will ask Juliana to share our Jamboard. And that way everyone can see the Jamboard in case you're not very familiarized with this platform. Diego, can you please show us how to do it? So you take a post-it,
Claro que sí.
right, Diego?
Entonces, colegas, los que están dentro de la plataforma
Can you
pueden
help us with
encontrar
that?
8 distintos
Yes, of
slides
course. So
donde
you'll
pueden
find
ver
8 different slides that you can switch from one another at the
los primeros
top
slides
part of your screen. So you'll see 1-8.
quieran responder a esta
The
pregunta
first
que ven en
slide,
pantalla,
you'll
entran ahí.
find the
Y lo
question,
que les
which is in
sugerimos es que
Spanish.
abran un sticky note o una nota adicional
So
a
we
donde
ask
ellos
you to
tienen
open
y
a
pongan
post-it or a
la
sticky note
ubicación
to the left side of your
la
screen.
pregunta, como ven en el
Write
ejemplo en
the
pantalla.
country
La idea es que puedan
you're
sacar
from,
una
the organization,
de las
and
preguntas
your
que les sacaron
response
fácil.
or your
Lo pueden
recommendations.
plasmar allí
So
en el
hopefully
chat que
you
está
were
generando
inspired by the
desde
previous
las
panel
organizaciones y
and
pueden
you
mandar sus
can
mensajes en el Jamboard.
address your
Las personas
own
que están o que
challenges
quieren
through
saber
it
más sobre el
and
inglés, la
answering
pregunta número 1
through the
se
Jamboard.
pone en los
So you'll
slides
find,
3 y
for those
4
of you in
y
English,
la
you'll
pregunta
find
número
the
2
question in English on slides 3 and 4,
con las
and
mismas
then
instrucciones.
7
Entonces,
and
si
8.
yo fuera a hablar sobre
So
algunos
3 and 4 are the
de las
slides in
organizaciones
English,
que
as well
quiero
as 7
recomendarles de
and
algunas
8.
organizaciones, si yo
So
digo
here
que
would
quiero
like you
participar, escribo
to
Colombia, que es
share,
donde vivo,
and if
pongo
I'd like
el
to
comentario
share, for
y
example,
luego
I'll write
hacia
Colombia, that's where I live,
hacer
CALP, the
este tipo
organization
de
I
intervención.
work
Como
in,
saben, en la parte de
and
arriba a la
my
derecha
comment
pueden
or
ingresar en
my
cualquier idioma.
answer. So I see someone is
Tenemos
adding a
alrededor de
sticky
26
note.
personas que se están sumando a
Indeed,
la
we have
plataforma.
26 people in our Jamboard. So let's go to our English slides. There we go. Slide 3, 3 out of 9, you'll find the slide in English.
El clic del mouse sobre la nota
You
adicional
can do a left
en la parte izquierda.
side click
Puedes
so
ponerlo
that people can
donde están
see
las opciones,
how
donde ves el esfero y todo lo demás. Ahí, en la
to
parte
add a
donde dice
sticky
doble
note.
clic,
There
ahí
you go. So
puedes
you click
escribir
there, and you can even choose the color of the
y lo
sticky note.
adicional
So
escoger el color
you
con la
can
pregunta.
write
Vamos a
the
tomar
country,
alrededor de
the
7 a
organization,
8
and
minutos
your
para que
comment.
piensen en una pregunta
So we'll
que
take
les
about
gustaría
7 to 8
y
minutes for you
podamos
to
tener alguna
think of a
respuesta en
answer or a
conjunto.
recommendation, and that way we can see what you shared on the screen. Diego, have you noticed that we have people from all over the world? 30% are from outside the Americas region. That's quite exciting. So we might have examples from the Middle East, from Africa, from Asia. Don't be shy. You can find the questions in English on slide 3. What essential elements in place to promote a route-based approach? And we also have our colleagues from CALC who can add their opinions as well. They know how to use Jamboard, and there was some interest of having the Jamboard in French as well, because it's a global issue, right? Not only within the Americas. Indeed, in fact, Daniela was just mentioning how they will bring a Ukrainian experience and adapt it to Colombia. So I think the audience is thinking hard, thinking, mulling over. Okay, so we got a answer from Mexico. from red rows. One solution can be coordinated through the registry of beneficiaries of offline. So there is some ideas on how to follow up with the registration, so with the log, and eventually share that data to know where they're from, where they're coming from, where they're at. So it's important for the organizations to speak along the route. That way I also know with who to go to. There's another one, quite small. Thank you. Thank you for zooming in.
Okay.
So we have no effort duplication and amount synergy. So I can give the example of Peru. We have the transfer money group. They are linked with their connected with organizations, and that way they don't duplicate the efforts, and they also have synergy within the amounts. Many times donors ask you to assist more people with less money, so there's a debate on what to do. And there are some clear guidelines in Colombia. So there is another innovative idea, and I'd love to write my comments here as well. When we talk about people on the move, the amounts may be different because the needs are different and the costs are different as well. So how can we calculate the correct amount for a route covering maybe two or maybe three countries? So that's something I've been thinking about. We have some in English as well. I will read them in Spanish. These are from DRC, the Danish Refugee Council. A route-based approach would require coordination between different cash working groups in different countries. This is very important indeed. Up until now, no, we have no type of coordination or conversation like this. We also have another one from a co-response organization saying, I am not aware of a route-based approach currently in the US. We are working on a platform to collaborate with organizations and would like to partner with other INGOs. So we've talked about collaboration and coordination between organizations can help us move towards a route-based approach eventually. Okay, cash working groups in Colombia work together to calculate the amount and to cover the access gap to basic needs. And indeed, there are formulas to calculate a basic amount to that included a average of the revenue, and this can vary along the route, but we need to include this in order to know if they're doing better or worse as they are on the move. We have a innovative idea here to establish agreements with the government and have a adequate coordination so to advocate in public policy. We haven't talked about governments a lot, but they have a very important context on this human mobility context. So opening up the space to have dialogues with governments is also a good idea. Indeed, and there's a challenge there because we need to innovate, but what happens when the government does not want to be part of it? What should we do? How to approach them? For example, Pierre mentioned one of the elements that donors have more value is those advocacy activities. So we can work on that when we start the pilot projects. for the rules-based approach. Okay, so we'll give 1 more minute on the Jamboard. The Jamboard will remain open. You can continue to add your comments to the Jamboard. It will stay open. There's another comment on digital tools that can be used for this approach, not only for cash transfers, but also for monitoring. There is a question as well on the chat. So, Diego, let's go back to our panel and see what they answer. Of course, thank you, Juliana, for working the Jamboard and showing us how it works. As Holly says, the Jamboard will stay open indefinitely. We usually leave it open in case you have an idea when you go to lunch that you like to add. And now we'd like to go back to our panelists and see if we can answer some of the questions in the chat box. So, Guadalupe, I believe there's a question for you, a question that we received through one of our platforms. It is regarding risk mitigation. How are you reducing risks, and how do you think about people who are participants of these CVA programming? How can they receive them? How do you reduce the risks? And what beneficiaries could face this risk? How do you identify the ones that are at a higher risk than others? Does your platform or your system is able to identify some of the expenses linked to other activities? How do you interpret all of that data? So if I understood correctly, the question is, do we control who we award the benefits to directly? Because if it is what we do, so the answer, what we provide is a service through a platform who provides the rewards, who gives the cards, and the salaries are the organizations. These are the organizations are the ones who control what benefits, how much. We are able to set some locks, for example, on products that cannot buy tobacco or alcoholic beverages. That is a automatic lock asked by our clients. However, we can add other locks according to the specific needs. For example, an example, if someone is looking for a product that can only be purchased or bought at a place where they can buy food, basket, basics, so we can give an authorization for that card to be used in those specific places. Exactly. The question is, does the system allow you to add restrictions or locks or to increase the amount? Because working in one country or another, they might need to have two transfers in one country. So can you play around that? Thank you. Yes, that is possible. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. We have another interesting question for Daniela. Daniela, what happened with the monitoring aspect? I believe this is very linked to the experience you shared regarding routes in other parts of the world, because with people on the move, organizations also have their M&E work to be done and CVA. So how do you link that monitoring aspect with another organization when you're doing this type of work? Indeed, thank you so much for this interesting question. That is a challenge, and with the organizations, we work similarly, so that is a positive aspect, and donors want to see tangible actions. They want to see the resources being used in the right people. So communication is crucial. We, whenever we have a transfer, we come back after a month and we do focal groups or surveys, but sometimes it's very difficult to do that. So we work with national partners throughout the different countries we're present, and that's another way to share information. Perhaps not through what, but we do have focal groups with people on the move. There was a recent exercise in Colombia of CVA with migrants, and we got this data of 84% of the people interviewed, 84%, sorry, not 84 people, 84% preferred assistance in cab. So we work on that to ask them about the assistance they received, how they used it, and how they received the assistance, and that's the monitoring activities that we do. There are other ways to do so. There are digital tools that we'd like to start implementing in our region. For example, Access IC in Ukraine, we see that they use a dashboard. So people who have been able to register in the application in this app, we see how they have been moving. In fact, we see some dots in the map of America, people from Europe coming to America, and communication with those people, of course. So people that have access to a smartphone and all of that. But I think that we are seeing those cases, and we see that with people on the move using that type of technology. So that's another way in the future to use and to have more direct contact with the people we're working with. That is a challenge, but we are working on it and see how we can work on that.
Accountability, que en español decimos SEA, y también tratamos de hacer ese tipo de, así como don Héctor, también abordar a personas acerca
As
de
Hector mentioned, that we wanted to work at different levels to perform interviews, etc., in order to monitor and calibrate our surveys and our response. That's very interesting. You are mentioning a very important point, which is this. Recently, I had the opportunity to be at the border between Nicaragua and Panama, and the majority of the people have a smartphone. Normally, we would think that they wouldn't because they are in a risky context, but they are keeping their communication, which is key to keep in touch with their families. So monitoring is interesting because we see strategies such as using Facebook. Some agencies are using this network to get in touch with the beneficiaries. Also, people are using the internet to get in touch with their families and agencies. There is an initiative that distributes SIM cards, and they are also in touch through WhatsApp. That is, in fact, one of the services that we offer. We are providing access to these technologies so that people who do not have a phone can still get in touch with their families and get access to information. They can also send information about where they are so that everybody is at peace with that. Thank you, Daniela. We have a question for Pierre, but maybe many of us can answer it. So, Pierre, why people are traveling, how can we ensure that they will be able to tend to their needs and to have access to existing markets? What can you say about this? This is very interesting. Thank you for the question. They needed to do preparatory work. For example, we have a quick response mechanism in Colombia in conflict-affected areas. However, the market is not always available. In other words, we needed to prepare and evaluate the situation to understand where it is possible to deploy these initiatives, where it's not possible, who is the potential financial service provider, to identify the barriers and the multiple mechanisms appropriated to the context. This job can be done with CVA coordination groups. This can also be very helpful as a part of an internal analysis. Thank you, Pierre. Hector, I think that this question is interesting because you had to go through different places to get to Poncayán. When SOA approached you, you said that those markets were different. You had access to food, to housing. So what do you think can be improved? In my case, support was very specific. The only thing I would like to emphasize, and my only recommendation for improvement, is that there should be more places that accept these forms of support. For example, more supermarkets, more restaurants along the way, because only a handful of restaurants would accept our vouchers. For example, I was only able to buy a bus tickets at the bus station in Poncayán. That was the only place where I could use my card. Thank you so much. If you have anything to share in 20 seconds, what recommendation would you make, or what idea would you share? What is the main takeaway you would like for people? Well, I think that there are a lot of lessons learned. However, at a global level, I think that all these efforts should come together into a single one. That way, humanitarian assistance will reach more people because they are the ones in most need. Because nobody but us knows what we are going through. Thank you so much to the panelists. It's the first time I participate in an international panel. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. I am very proud to meet you. Guadalupe, same question for you. In 20 seconds, what is your key message? Thank you so much. I would only like to thank the CALPA team for inviting me to this panel, and thank you for continuing to work towards improving CVA programs. Thank you everyone for being here, and I would like to conclude by inviting you to understand that our technology is better so that we can all build a better future together. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daniela. Anything you want to share in 20 seconds? As you have said, this is a very important step forward. We have the most relevant stakeholders in this panel, and it is highly motivating to hear the experience of people like Hector. We understand that this is a very humane work. This is not something that you only read about and you understand it. We are dealing with people and their needs, and this should motivate us to continue to work as a team, as humanitarians, and to join efforts, because we will go further if we work together. Thank you so much, Daniela. Pierre, anything you want to say? What are your last thoughts? We have already seen this and we have discussed this among the donors. We see that this is desirable and feasible. Indeed, this takes a process, but we will continue to support this. We will start working on a route-based approach in order to provide the best possible response to beneficiaries. Excellent, Pierre. So I was going to conclude with what you said. Thank you so much to you, the four of you, for participating as well as the audience. And I will hand it over to Holly to conclude the event. Thank you. It is very difficult to interrupt such a committed panel. Some of the points I heard were the following. People in mobility have different needs, and it's them and only them who understand those needs. We also need a more coordinated response. Daniela was also talking about a united front and real examples that show us that this approach is indeed possible. Guadalupe Ramirez was talking about the challenges, about how they worked in 4 new countries, but they were able to do it. Going back to what Pierre said, he emphasized the crisis, and I loved the idea that the sector needs to focus on a route-based approach, but although it is not the only approach that will answer these or to find the answers to these problems. However, we should not lose sight of the importance of cash-based transfers. To conclude, I would like to say that we are going to share the recording in English and Spanish as well as the documents, and I would like to invite you to get in touch with us. If you have any case studies, please share them with us. We understand that this is a situation that millions of people are going through. I am sorry that we were not able to answer all the questions, but you can always stay in touch with us or with the panelists to discuss your questions further. And we will continue to build the solutions for people in mobility so that they can increase their resilience and we can improve our humanitarian response. And I think that I will conclude with this. I invite you to keep in touch with us, and I think that on the chat you will see the links to our LinkedIn pages in Spanish, English, and French. If you wanted to subscribe to our newsletters, please do so. And without further ado, thank you so much. I would like to know if the panelists could open their camera so that we can take a virtual picture and we can say goodbye to our virtual audience. It was a pleasure to be here with you, and I hope to see you again in other spaces. I am very excited about the solutions that we will provide to people in mobility. Thank you so much and have a good day, good evening, or good night, depending on where you are.